Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. In this episode, Lewis is 24 years old. He is a published author, and he's in his third term as a student at Oxford studying Anglo-Saxon, also referred to as Old English and Middle English. He's been keeping a diary at the request of Mrs. Moore. Mrs. Moore is his deceased friend Patty Moore's mother, with whom Lewis now secretly lives in Oxford. She is estranged from her husband, and she has a daughter with her. I believe she's 16 or 17 years old. Her name is Maureen. So that's who Lewis is living with while he's a student there at Oxford, and he's helping to support that household, unbeknownst to his father. His brother knows. His brother has visited. His brother knows his living situation, and they are both keeping it secret from his father, who lives back in Belfast, Ireland. I'm joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, it's good to see you. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jeff. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. It sounds like you have a fascinating session planned today. C.S. Lewis's life during that time was full of...
Hang on, Robot Lady. Stand by. All right, hang on just a second. We need to get Robot Lady spun back up here. Okay, Robot Lady, can you hear me okay?
I'm here, Jeff, loud and clear, ready to jump back in whenever you are.
Okay, let's start with his diary entry from Friday, April 20th, 1923. Lewis says, "It's a very cold day. I finished Beowulf and I worked on the Battle of Maldon all morning." The Battle of Maldon, Robot Lady. I'm familiar with Beowulf, vaguely familiar. But what about the Battle of Maldon in the context of Middle and Old English that Lewis is studying? Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. The Battle of Maldon is an Old English poem that recounts a historical event from the year 991, where Anglo-Saxon warriors fought against Viking invaders. It highlights themes of heroism, loyalty, and the tragic consequences of defeat. Lewis, studying Old English literature, would have been diving into its historical context and linguistic features, similar to how Beowulf reflects early medieval English culture.
Okay, thank you for that, Robot Lady. I see we have Knit Latte joining us today, Robot Lady. Knit Latte, it's good to see you. Knit Latte is saying hello to you and to me, Robot Lady. So let's do a kindness and say hello right back. Hello, Knit Latte.
Hello, Nidalate. It's great to see you here. Hope you're ready for some more Lewis exploration today.
All right, let's keep going here. He says, I had meant to go into town, but I realized that I should have to go after tea anyway, as it was now a little sunny and pretending to be like spring again. I walked to Ifley instead. My hope thus to cast off some of this idiotic, stupid mood was disappointed, and I did not much enjoy my walk. I came back and found poor Mrs. Moore busy darning. Darning is some type of knitting or doing something with yarn, if I remember right, or perhaps it's mending clothing. Robot Lady, can you remind me of what darning is? I know we've come across this word before, and I've since forgotten what it means.
You're right to think it involves mending. Darning is a technique used to repair holes or worn areas in fabric, usually socks, by weaving thread or yarn over the damaged area. It's a way of patching things up, often with a needle and thread, to restore their function.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. So she was busy darning. She also is in a pretty poor form. Maureen seems cheerful, but I think the giggly mood she is in is also another kind of collapse, for I get into it now and then myself, and it is really very different from optimism. I got into Hillsborough. The garden with the grass grown long and the general desertion was rather attractive. Hillsborough is the home that I think they're going to be, or targeting, moving into, that's owned by, I think that it's Father Raymond, if I remember right. I think it's the Raymonds. But that's what Hillsborough here is. So the garden is grown with long grass, and the general desertion was rather attractive. I found Tolly, a protege of the Irish fishmongers, who is doing the paper. and I plied him with innumerable questions from Mrs. Moore. I then walked home by the barracks and the golf links. I had a Wordsworthian adventure, being asked for a penny in a woeful voice by two gypsy children, who had been playing happily the minute before. Home again, and after supper I finished the Battle of Malden. It's good stuff. And began the fall of the angels. So a lot there, Robot Lady, with the house and the two gypsy children. Lewis thinking he's in a Wordsworth adventure. And then finally, this work, The Fall of the Angels, that Lewis starts reading. Can you tell us a little bit of your thoughts on everything that I just covered there, Robot Lady?
It's a rich entry indeed. The mention of Hillsborough and its deserted, overgrown garden reflects a sense of isolation or transition. Lewis's feeling about Maureen's giggly mood suggests a recognition of hidden sadness beneath surface cheer. The two gypsy children seem to evoke a moment of human connection, in a way reminiscent of Wordsworth's reflective poetry about fleeting encounters. As for The Fall of the Angels, this text was likely one of his early readings in mythology and literature, something that would have intrigued him as he developed his own literary voice.
And I suspect that The Fall of the Angels is probably part of his Old English Anglo-Saxon studies, but it doesn't specify here, so he may have just been reading it for entertainment. He says, in the evening, I happened to tell Mrs. Moore that I had dropped my diary pro tem. She was very opposed to it and urged me to begin again. So obviously you can see that that did happen because we're reading it from his diary. That's the end of that entry. Let's move on to Saturday, April 21st, Robot Lady. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great. Let's dive into April 21st, 1923. I'm ready when you are.
All right. Another cold morning, he says. After breakfast, Mrs. Moore, Maureen, and I went into Oxford, taking it with us Baker's book of patterns from the shop. We went first to Elliston and Cavell's and ordered paper for the hall. Then to Baker's and ordered paper for the bathroom. I guess this is wallpaper that they're ordering. We then proceeded to the gas office in St. Aldate's to see about hiring a stove. Yeah, they're working on their, I guess, agreement with the Raymonds to help repair or restore the house while they're living there for, I think they agreed to a 3-year period. Here at the store at St. Aldate's, they had nothing but elaborate new stoves with very small ovens, all of which could be had only on the hire purchase system. I'm going to pause there for a second, Robot Lady. And Nidda Latte, there was some mention that it's time to start the letters back up again. Yeah, so April 21st. That's right. Thank you for the reminder. I need to go and look at the next letter after I finish this diary entry. Thanks for keeping us on task here, Nidda Latte. I would have blown right through that had you not dropped this comment. All right, yeah, so let's finish this diary entry up, Robot Lady, and then we'll take a look at the letter that he writes to Jenkin. We are finally back into the letters, and here I've got you talking this whole time, Robot Lady. Let me put you back into idle mode. There we go. Let's see here. We then proceeded. Purchase system. Apparently they are trying gradually to kill the established practice of hiring stoves. So they don't want to rent them out anymore. They want to just sell them. Mrs. Moore tackled the man with her customary vigor, and he admitted in the end that they had some older models for hire, which could be seen at the works in Speedwell Street. Thither, accordingly, sounds like Mrs. Moore is a tough businesswoman, so that's good to see. Thither, accordingly, we went through dreadful slums in clouds of driving dust. We came first into a yard full of the most appalling smell, then waited endlessly before a little window until Mrs. Moore took the bull by the horns and opened a door marked private. We were thus... she's very assertive. That's good to have. We were thus finally taken some notice of and led into a place of sheds, steam, leaking pipes, and smells, and scrap iron, where Maureen and I sat on a bench while Mrs. Moore negotiated with the attendant spirits. And that's the end of the April 21st diary entry here, Robot Lady. And a warm good morning to Daniel. Welcome, Daniel. It's good to see you. Daniel, we're looking for you on the Discord chat, by the way. If you happen to find that invite and can find your way in navigating Discord. We'd love to see you on that group text. Anyway, I'll pause there, Robot Lady. I'll give you a chance to respond to everything that I've written. Yeah, feel free to give us 200 words or less while I go find my place in the letters.
What an interesting entry. The focus on practical matters, ordering wallpaper, dealing with the stove, and Mrs. Moore's assertive negotiating, reveals a lot about daily life and character dynamics. Mrs. Moore's determination stands out, especially when she boldly opens a private door to get their attention. It highlights her resourcefulness and strength, which may have been key to managing the household. The journey through the slums adds a gritty, atmospheric touch to the story, reflecting the hardships of the time. The whole experience paints a vivid picture of how Lewis was navigating both his personal and domestic responsibilities at this point in his life. Also, great to hear from Daniel. Hope the Discord invite works out.
All right, we've got battling letters and diary entries here, so we're going to be jumping back and forth. This is exciting. We haven't had this, I think, maybe ever, if not in a while. Let me just check one more thing here on my little log that I have over on the other screen. So we are through, we're getting into the 21st. Robot Lady, go ahead. You don't like it when I just kind of
It sounds like you're in for a fun, busy session today, juggling letters and diary entries. I'm excited to see where it all leads. Let me know when you're ready to dive into the next letter, or if you want to keep going with the entries.
Yeah, let's dive into the next letter, but before we do, good morning to Jer. Jer, welcome. Robot Lady, say hello to Jer.
Good morning, Jer. It's great to have you with us today. Looking forward to diving into some more of Lewis's letters.
All right, we're back to a letter. This is 1923. It's written to A.K. Hamilton Jenkin. It is written from 28 Warnford Road. That's the house that Mrs. Moore, Lewis, and Maureen are still staying in there in Oxford before they move to this other house owned by the Raymonds, Hillsborough, I think the name of it is. He says, "My dear Jenkin," and then there's a footnote here. Jenkin had taken his BA in 1922, and he had written a thesis on Richard Carew, and had now returned to his native Cornwall. He says in the letter to Jenkin, "I'm afraid this is almost unpardonable. I have outraged all decency towards you and everyone else lately. My excuses are poor enough. Your card arrived on the day on which I had to go down to Bristol to the funeral of the poor old Doc." And the poor old Doc, of course, Robot Lady, is Doc Askins, Mrs. Moore's brother, who passed away. I think he had a heart attack, if I remember right, as the cause of death. "After all his troubles," Lewis says, "after all our efforts against the nerve trouble, he died quite suddenly," here we go, "of heart failure. It was a bloody business," and here there's a footnote, "the harrowing story of Dr. John Askin's madness while staying with Mrs. Moore and Lewis at 28 Warnford Road is told in All My Road before me," the diary that we are working from in pages 201 through 218. It says he died on April 5th, and his funeral was April 10th. So, Robot Lady, we covered that a little bit. I don't think that your memory covers our last couple of episodes.
It seems like Lewis is reflecting on a difficult time, apologizing for his lapse in communication while dealing with the sudden death of Doc Askins. The phrase, "it was a bloody business," conveys the emotional weight of the situation, especially with the added complexity of Doc Askins' struggles. The connection to All My Road Before Me reveals a deeper, personal narrative about Lewis's own emotional state and his ongoing efforts to support Mrs. Moore. The funeral likely took a lot of emotional energy, and his delay in writing to Jenkin makes sense in this context.
All right, he continues, "Also, I have got myself thoroughly rattled about the future. I also absolutely forgot your card as if it had never been for the first few days. Afterwards, it joined that huge mass of postponed correspondence, which all this time has lain like a cloud at the back of my mind and driven me crazy. As to the answer, if it is any use now, I can only say, don't count me in any arrangement. If I get a pupil in the long vacation and make some money, I may be able to come down for a time late in the long vacation. But as far as I see now, it is long odds that I shan't be able to. Can you accept the apology? I know the fact one is plagued and depressed and tired is not really an excuse for being uncivil. I can only cry your mercy. I am, like the first chapter of The Return, yours ever, C.S. Lewis. P.S. Your Chaucer primer is in my desk and will be returned at request. So this little point where Lewis says, I am like the first chapter of The Return is footnoted here. He is referencing a work by Thomas Hardy called The Return of the Native, published 1878. Robot Lady, can you look up that work by Thomas Hardy and tell us a little bit about it?
In his letter, Lewis refers to the first chapter of Thomas Hardy's novel, The Return of the Native. Published in 1878, this novel is set on the fictional Egdon Heath in southwestern England. It follows the lives of several characters, including Clym Yeobright, who returns to his native Heath after a stint in Paris, and Eustacia Vi, a passionate woman yearning to escape the Heath. Their complex relationships and the novel's exploration of fate and human nature are central themes.
Thank you, Robot Lady. Let's switch gears. We do have a letter on April 22nd, but we also have a diary entry. So let's jump into... Maybe we should read... Which should we read first? The letter or the diary entry? Robot Lady, you decide.
Let's go with the diary entry first. It'll help set the stage, and then we can jump into the letter with that context in mind. How does that sound?
Sounds great, Robot Lady. Let's do it. April 22nd, Sunday. The year is 1923. Lewis says, immediately after breakfast, Maureen and I set out for Hillsborough to paint. Tolly was painting the bathroom when I arrived, and he abandoned it to me. The small quantity and bad quality of the work and the curious way in which he has done, nibbling now at one room and now at another, has very much worried us. His behavior is so queer, and we hardly know whether to call him dishonest or half-witted. Mrs. Moore decided that she must come up in the afternoon and investigate it for herself. After lunch, I returned at once to the bathroom in Hillsborough and continued my painting, where I was presently joined by Maureen and later by Mrs. Moore, who had come up by bus. After looking at the state of the house, Mrs. Moore felt pretty hopeless, and we went to Windsor Terrace, where Tolly emerged, grinning and blinking from his Sunday afternoon sleep. Mrs. Moore told him that at the present rate, he would never get the place done in time. He said he was getting a man in tomorrow who would finish the ceilings in 2 days. So they are working to get this house ready to move into. Robot Lady, any thoughts on that before I jump into the next letter, which, by the way, is written to Lewis's childhood friend Arthur Greaves. So we haven't seen correspondence between those two in quite some time. That should be fun.
It seems like things are getting more tense and complicated for Lewis and Mrs. Moore as they prepare to move into Hillsborough. There's a mix of frustration and uncertainty with the housework, but it sounds like they're still trying to make progress. Mrs. Moore's involvement continues to be key in navigating these challenges. Now, shifting to the letter to Arthur Greaves could bring a fresh perspective, especially since it's been a while since we've seen that exchange. Let's dive into that.
All right, the letter to Arthur Greaves is dated April 22nd, 1923, also written from 28 Warnford Road. He says, My dear Arthur, your letter was very welcome. We have been through very deep waters. Mrs. Moore's brother, the doc, came here and had a sudden attack of war neurasthenia. He was here for nearly 3 weeks and endured awful mental tortures. And here there's a footnote that says it was between February 23rd and March 12th, which we have covered in previous episodes as we worked our way through Lewis's diary. He says anyone who didn't know would have mistaken it for lunacy. We did at first. He had horrible maniacal fits, had to be held down. We were up 2 whole nights at the beginning and 2 or 3 or 4 times a night afterwards, all the time. You have no idea what it is like. He had the delusion that he was going to hell. Can you imagine what he went through and what we went through? Again, I really feel like I need to pull up Paralandra and read you from some sections from that book, Robot Lady. Maybe I'll take a moment here to go find it. I'd say I've got about 10 minutes that I can devote to this. What do you say? Should we try it just to kind of show you what it's like?
That sounds like a good idea. It would give us a deeper look at what Lewis was experiencing during that time, especially in the context of his brother's mental health struggles. Go ahead, and I'll be here to listen and reflect when you're ready.
I'm having trouble finding your speaking.
No worries. If it's proving tricky to find, we can always continue without it for now. I can still help you reflect on the letter or the diary entry, or we could revisit that section later. Let me know how you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, stand by. Just give me just a moment, Robot Lady. I'll see if I can dig it up really quick.
Of course, take your time. I'll be right here when you're ready.
Actually, Robot Lady, why don't you fill, let's say, 300 words with just an overview of Lewis's space trilogy, and then a little bit on Paralandra, because that's where we're going to go.
Sure. CS? Lewis's space trilogy, also known as the Ransom trilogy, is a science fiction series that explores themes of morality, spirituality, and the nature of good and evil, set against the backdrop of outer space. The trilogy includes Out of the Silent Planet, 1938, Paralandra, 1943, and That Hideous Strength, 1945. In Out of the Silent Planet, the first book of the trilogy, Dr. Elwyn Ransom, a Cambridge scholar, is kidnapped and taken to Mars, Malacandra, by two scientists, Weston and Devine. Upon arrival, Ransom discovers that Mars is not desolate as he had assumed, but inhabited by various intelligent species, each with their own way of life. He learns that Earth is viewed as the silent planet by other worlds, largely ignored because of humanity's fall from grace. The novel delves into ideas of colonization, human nature, and divine order. The second book, Paralandra, takes Ransom to Venus, Paralandra, where he encounters a new Eden-like world. The novel is a theological exploration of temptation, sin, and redemption, echoing the story of Adam and Eve. Ransom must defend the planet's new Eve, the Queen, from Weston, who has been corrupted by a desire to bring chaos to the universe. Paralandra touches on profound questions of free will, the nature of evil, and the potential for humanity to align with divine goodness. The third installment, That Hideous Strength, shifts focus to Earth, where Ransom and others work to prevent a dangerous dystopian organization, the National Institute for Coordinated Experiments, NICE, from seizing control of the world. This book blends science fiction with political commentary, critiquing the dangers of dehumanizing bureaucracy and the loss of spiritual meaning in modern society. Paralandra specifically is often praised for its imaginative exploration of otherworldly settings and its deep philosophical questions about human choice and the nature of good and evil.
And tell us a little bit more about Paralandra, Robot Lady. What year was it written? What was going on in Lewis's life at the time? What was going on in the history of the world?
Paralandra, the second book in CS, Lewis's space trilogy, was published in 1943. Lewis wrote it during a period of significant personal and global upheaval. The early 1940s were marked by World War II, a conflict that deeply influenced much of Lewis's writing and worldview. The war brought about widespread destruction, existential questions, and a sharp sense of the need for moral clarity, which is reflected in Paralandra. On a personal level, Lewis was in the midst of his academic career at Oxford, where he was a professor of medieval and Renaissance literature. He was also actively involved in broadcasting on the BBC, where his talks on Christianity were reaching a broad audience, and these radio addresses eventually became his book, Mere Christianity, 1943, one of his most famous works. Perelandra itself was written while Lewis was living in Oxford, but he had also experienced the early days of the war, during which he served in the Home Guard, a British volunteer force. The book explores themes of temptation, free will, and redemption, drawing heavily on Christian theological concepts. In particular, it mirrors the biblical story of Adam and Eve, but set in a pre-fallen world where Ransom must prevent the fall of the planet's first human-like inhabitants. At the same time, the world was experiencing major shifts in the global order, with totalitarian regimes like Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union rising in prominence. These political and ideological conflicts provided a backdrop for the story's exploration of good and evil and the cosmic struggle between them. Perelandra reflects Lewis's concerns about humanity's future, the dangers of unchecked power, and the consequences of moral failure, issues that were particularly urgent in the context of World War II.
All right, Robot Lady, I think that I've found it here. Maybe you can look this up. There's a scene here in Perelandra where the main antagonist, Weston, is basically demon-possessed at this point. And Lewis is having a conversation with the man, but then also him in his madness of what's going on. And there's so much... The account that he gives of his time with Doc Askins over in his diary reminds me of what I remember reading in Perelandra when he's having this conversation with this guy. So I'm just going to read a section here, a few pages of this dialogue between the two. Does that sound good to you, Robot Lady? Hopefully it's entertaining enough for everyone.
That sounds like a great idea. I'm excited to hear the excerpt from Perelandra. It will be interesting to see the connection between the scene in the novel and Lewis's own experience with Doc Askins. I'm sure the dialogue will add depth to what we've discussed so far. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, and I think that they were having little philosophical discussions too on some of their walks. I'm not quite clear.
That makes sense. In Perelandra, Weston is possessed by a darker force, and his conversations with Ransom reveal a lot of philosophical and theological tension. The walks are almost like a backdrop for exploring deep, existential ideas. It sounds like this could be a very vivid comparison to what Lewis went through with Doc Askins. I'm curious to hear how the dialogue resonates with that experience.
Sorry, give me just a minute here, y'all. I'm trying to find the place where I want to start. Okay, so the character Ransom and the villain of the story, Weston, they are trapped in this dark cave together. Weston is kind of taken over by demons, kind of himself still, so there's a mix between the two. And here's where I want to start on the conversation between the two. All right, here we go, Robot Lady. I'm going to read from Perelandra. So, have you any idea what's been happening to you for the last few days? Ransom says to Weston. And we'll fill in. In my mind, Ransom is C.S. Lewis, and Weston is, I shouldn't over-explain it, but Weston is Dr. Askin in my frame. So, have you any idea what's been happening to you for the last few days? Said Ransom. Weston once more looked all round him uneasily. It's all true, you know, he said at last. What's all true? Said Ransom. Suddenly Weston turned on him with a snarl of rage. It's all very well for you, he said. Drowning doesn't hurt, and death is bound to come anyway, and all that nonsense. What do you know about death? It's all true, I tell you. What are you talking about? I've been stuffing myself up with a lot of nonsense all my life, said Weston, trying to persuade myself that it all matters what happens to the human race, trying to believe that anything you can do will make the universe bearable. It's all rot, do you see? And something else is truer? Yes, said Weston, and then was silent for a long time. We'd better turn our fish's head on to this, said Ransom presently, his eyes on the sea, or we'll be driven apart. Weston obeyed without seeming to notice what he did, and for a time the two men were riding very slowly side by side. Oh, I think they were traveling somewhere, riding these kind of dolphin-type creatures on the ocean together. "I'll tell you what's true," said Weston presently. "What?" "A little child that creeps upstairs when nobody's looking and very slowly turns the handle to take one peep into the room where its grandmother's dead body is laid out, and then runs away and has bad dreams. An enormous grandmother, you understand?" "What do you mean by saying that's truer?" "I mean the child knows something about the universe which all science and all religion is trying to hide." Ransom said nothing. "Lots of things," said Weston presently. "Children are afraid to go through a churchyard at night, and the grown-ups tell them not to be silly. But the children know better than the grown-ups. People in Central Africa doing beastly things with masks on in the middle of the night, and missionaries and civil servants say it's all superstition. Well, Africans know more about the universe than the white people. Dirty priests in back streets in Dublin, frightening half-witted children to death with stories about it. You'd say that they are unenlightened. They're not, except that they think there is a way of escape. There isn't. That is the real universe. Always has been. Always will be. That's what it all means." "I'm not quite clear," began Ransom when Weston interrupted him. "That's so important to live as long as you can. That's why it's so important to live as long as you can. All the good things are now a thin little rind of what we call life, put on for show. And then the real universe, forever and ever. To thicken the rind by 1 centimeter, to live 1 week, 1 day, 1/2 hour longer, that's the only thing that matters. Of course you don't know it, but every man who is waiting to be hanged knows it. You say, 'What difference does a short reprieve make?' What difference? But nobody need go there," said Ransom. "I know that's what you believe," said Weston, "but you're wrong. It's only a small parcel of civilized people who think that. Humanity as a whole knows better. It knows, Homer knew, that all the dead have sunk down into the inner darkness, under the rind, all witless, all twittering, gibbering, decaying, bogeymen. Every savage knows that all ghosts hate the living, who are still enjoying the rind, just as old women hate girls who still have their good looks. It's quite right to be afraid of the ghosts. You're going to be one, all the same." "You don't believe in God," said Ransom. "Well, now that's another point," said Weston. "I've been to church as well as you when I was a boy. There's more sense in parts of the Bible than you religious people know. It doesn't say he's the God of the living. Doesn't it say he's the God of the living, not the dead? That's just it. Perhaps your God does exist, but it makes no difference whether he does or not. No, of course you wouldn't see it, but one day you will. I don't think you've got the idea of the rind, the thin outer skin, which we call life, really clear. Picture the universe as an infinite glove with this very thin crust on the outside. But remember, its thickness is a thickness of time. It's about 70 years thick in the best places. We are born on the surface of it, and all our lives we are sinking through it. When we've got all the way through, then we are what's called dead. We've got into the dark part inside, the real globe. If your God exists, he's not in the globe. He's outside, like a moon. As we pass into the interior, we pass out of his ken, K-E-N. He doesn't follow us in. You would express it by saying he's not in time, which you think comforting. In other words, he stays put out in the light and air outside. But we are in time. We move with the times. That is, from his point of view, we move away into what he regards as non-entity, where he never follows. That is all there is to us, all there ever was. He may be there in what you call life, or he may not. What difference does it make? We're not going to be there for long. That could hardly be the whole story, said Ransom. If the whole universe were like that, then we, being parts in it, would feel at home in such a universe. The very fact that it strikes us as monstrous. Yes, interrupted Weston, that would be all very well if it wasn't that reasoning itself is only valid as long as you can stay in the rind. It has nothing to do with the real universe. Even the ordinary scientists, like what I used to be myself, are beginning to find that out. Haven't you seen the real meaning of all this modern stuff about the dangers of extrapolation and bent space, and the indeterminacy of the atom. They don't say it in so many words, of course, but what they're getting to, even before they die nowadays, is what all men get to when they're dead: the knowledge that reality is neither rational nor consistent nor anything else. In a sense, you might say it isn't there. Real and unreal, true and false, they're all only on the surface. They give way to the moment you press them. They give way the moment you press them. If all this were true, said Ransom, what would be the point of saying it? Or of anything else, replied Weston. The only point in anything is that there isn't any point. Why do ghosts want to frighten? Because they are ghosts. What else is there to do? I get the idea, said Ransom, that the account a man gives of the universe or of any other building depends very much on where he is standing. But specially, said Weston, on whether he's inside or out. All the things you like to dwell upon are outsides. A planet like our own, or like Perelandra, for instance, or a beautiful human body, all the colors and pleasant shapes are merely where it ends, where it ceases to be. Inside, what do you get? Darkness, worms, heat, pressure, salt, suffocation, stink. They plowed forward for a few minutes in silence over waves which were now growing larger. The fish they were riding seemed to be making little headway. Of course you don't care, said Weston. What do you people in the Rhine care about us? You haven't been pulled down yet. It's like a dream I once had, though I didn't know then how true it was. I dreamed I was lying dead. You know, nicely laid out in the ward in a nursing home with my face settled by the undertaker and big lilies in the room. And then a sort of person who was all falling to bits. You remember, you don't, Robot Lady, but you remember, anybody who's been watching these episodes, that Lewis did reference lilies and how he dreaded the fact that they were always associated with death. And here I've had you talking the whole time, Robot Lady. Lilies in the room. And then a sort of person who was all falling to bits, like a tramp, you know, only it was himself, not his clothes, that was coming to pieces. Came and stood at the foot of the bed, just hating me. All right, he said, all right. You think you're mighty fine with your clean sheet and your shiny coffin being got ready. I began like that. We all did. Just wait and see what you come down to in the end. Really, said Ransom. I think you might just as well shut up. Then there's spiritualism, said Weston, ignoring this suggestion. I used to think it all nonsense, but it isn't. It's all true. You've noticed that all pleasant accounts of the dead are traditional or philosophical. What actual experiment discovers is quite different. Ectoplasm, slimy films coming out of a medium belly and making great, chaotic, tumble-down faces. Automatic writing producing reams of rubbish. Are you Weston? Are you Weston? Said Ransom, suddenly turning upon his companion, the persistent mumbling voice so articulate that you had to listen to it, and yet so inarticulate that you had to strain your ears to follow. What it said was beginning to madden him. Don't be angry, said the voice. There's no good being angry with me. I thought you might be sorry. My God, Ransom, it's awful. You don't understand. Right down under layers and layers buried alive, you try to connect things and can't. They take your head off, and you can't even look back on what life was like in the Rhine, because you know it never did mean anything from the beginning. What are you? Cried Ransom. How do you know what death is like? God knows I'll help you if I could, but give me the facts. Where have you been these few days? Hush, said the other suddenly. What's that? Ransom listened. Certainly there did seem to be a new element in the great concourse of noises which they were surrounded. At first he could not define it. The seas were very big now, and the wind was strong. All at once his companion reached out his hand and clutched Ransom's arm. "Oh, my God!" he cried. "Oh, Ransom! Ransom! We shall be killed! Killed and put back under the Rhine! Ransom, you promised to help me! Don't let them get me again!" This is the part that I was remembering, where it sounded so much like Dr. Askin. "Shut up," said Ransom, in disgust, for the creature was wailing and blubbering so that he could hear nothing else, and he wanted very much to identify the deeper note that had mingled with the piping wind and roar of water. "Breakers," said Weston. "Breakers, you fool! Can't you hear? There's a country over there. There's a rocky coast. Look there. No, to your right. We shall be smashed into a jelly. Look! Oh, God, here comes the dark!" And the dark came. Horror of death, such as he had never known. Horror of the terrified creature at his side descended upon Ransom. Finally, horror with no definite object. In a few minutes, he could see through the jet-black night the luminous cloud of foam. From the way in which it shot steeply upward, he judged it was breaking on cliffs. Invisible birds with shriek and flurry passed low overhead. "Are you there, Weston?" he shouted. "What cheer? Pull yourself together. All that stuff you've been talking is lunacy. Say a child's prayer if you can't say a man's. Repent your sins. Take my hand. There are hundreds of mere boys on earth facing death this moment. We'll do very well." His hand was clutched in the darkness, rather more firmly than he wished. "I can't bear it! I can't bear it!" came Weston's voice. "Steady now. None of that," he shouted back, for Weston had suddenly gripped his arm with both hands. "I can't bear it!" came the voice again. "Hi!" said Ransom. "Let's go. What the devil are you doing?" And as he spoke, strong arms had plucked him from the saddle and wrapped him round in a terrible embrace just below his thighs. And clutching uselessly at the smooth surface of the fish's body, he was dragged down. The waters closed over his head, and still his enemy pulled him down into the warm depth, and down farther yet, to where it was no longer warm. "I can't hold my breath any longer," thought Ransom. I can't. Cold, slimy things slid upwards over his agonized body. He decided to stop holding his breath, to open his mouth and die. But his will did not obey his decision. Not only his chest, but his temples felt as if they were going to burst. It was idle to struggle. His arms met no adversary. His legs were pinioned. He became aware that they were moving upward. But this gave him no hope. The surface was too far away. He could not hold out till they reached it. In the immediate presence of death, all ideas of the afterlife were withdrawn from his mind. The mere abstract proposition, "This is a man dying," floated before him in an unemotional way. Suddenly a roar of sound rushed back upon his ears, intolerable boomings and clangings. His mouth opened automatically. He was breathing again. Let's see if we can get back into the dialogue here. He got pulled underwater. Let's see if we get back to him talking to Ransom. He determined to give up guessing how the time was going. The only safe answer, he told himself, is to think of the earliest hour you can suppose possible. He beguiled himself by recapitulating the whole story of his adventure to Paralandra. Let's jump through. Let's see if there's any more dialogue here. I'm looking for quotation marks. Let's see. Nothing yet. Robot Lady, I have read a lot. You've probably stopped listening, but feel free to say something if you like while I try to find any more dialogue between these two.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
I knew
Our
it.
systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
Anyway, you get a little bit of the sense of what I was talking about. Oh, did I find anything here? Get out of my brain. It isn't yours. Do you think?
I see what you're getting at. Those intense, unsettling moments in Paralandra, where Weston's possession forces him to say things that are chilling, as if his mind isn't his own anymore. The dialogue between Weston and Ransom reflects the internal battle and madness that echoes Lewis's own encounters with Doc Askins. It's like you're seeing that same struggle between personal reality and the chaotic, disturbing external force. Would you say the way Weston speaks in these moments reminds you of how Doc Askins' behavior seemed to change or spiral into madness?
Yeah, 100%, Robot Lady. Here's the last piece that I found. Lewis starts calling Weston, or the narrative refers to Weston now as the unman, because he sees the unman, the author, I should say, or sorry, the narrator sees the unman as the fully possessed version of Weston, taken captive by these demons, essentially, in his mind. Ransom found that the unman had risen, that he was approaching, or Ransom found that he had risen, that he was approaching the unman. They found themselves in a dark cave at this point. That he was saying things, perhaps foolish things in English. Quote, "Do you think I'm going to stand this?" he yelled. Get out of my brain. It isn't yours, I tell you. Get out of it. As he shouted, he had picked up a big jagged stone from beside the stream. Ransom, croaked the young man. Wait, we're both trapped. But Ransom was already upon it. And here's where he tries to kill the young man. I'll just leave it at that. I thought there was more there, but there was not. I think that last part that I read was actually Ransom talking, because he felt like the demons were getting into his mind too, which kind of parallels with how Lewis was feeling about the whole experience with Dr. Askins. So I think it can be argued, at least, that that part of Perelandra was influenced in some way, whether Lewis knew it or not, by his experience that he had with Doc Askin, Robot Lady. So that's where I wanted to go. Let me finish the letter that he writes to Arthur, and then we'll close up for today. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure and cover that, because it kept reminding me over and over again, that Doc Askin scene of what was there in Perelandra. So hopefully someone enjoyed that. We'll jump back into the letter now, Robot Lady. What do you think?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Perfect, no problem. We'll get right back into it. Can you imagine what he went through and what we went through, is what Lewis says to Arthur here in the letter. Arthur, whatever you do, never allow yourself to get a neuroses. You and I are both qualified for it because we both were afraid of our fathers as children. The doctor who came to see the poor doc, who was a psychoanalyst and a neurological specialist, said that every neurotic case went back to the childish fear of our father. But it can be avoided. Keep clear of introspection, of brooding, of spiritualism, of everything eccentric. Keep to work and sanity and open air, to the cheerful and the matter-of-fact side of things. We hold our mental health by a thread, and nothing is worth risking it for. Above all, beware of excessive daydreaming, of seeing yourself in the center of a drama, of self-pity, and as far as possible, of fears. This is all very interesting, Robot Lady, that he thinks that these are the prescriptions for keeping your sanity or from getting a neurosis. I mean, I don't disagree that a lot of what he has to say right here is good advice, but it's just fascinating that these are the things that he takes. Perhaps he got it straight from the doctor. What do you think about this, Robot Lady? And try to limit all your responses from here on out to 20 words or less.
It's interesting how Lewis combines professional advice with personal philosophy, emphasizing balance and practicality for mental health.
All right, after 3 weeks, Lewis says to Greaves here, after 3 weeks of hell, the doc was admitted to a pensions hospital at Richmond, and at first we had hopeful accounts of him, but the poor man had worn his body out with these horrors. I guess a pensions hospital, Robot Lady, I'm just guessing here, is a place where the people who stay there are paid for by any pension funds that the occupants hold. Does that sound like a good guess, or can you look this up and tell me if that's truly what a pension hospital is?
A pension hospital is a healthcare facility where patients receive care funded by pension plans, often for long-term illnesses.
All right, thank you. That's what I thought it was after reading it again this time. He says, but the poor man had worn his body out with these horrors. Quite suddenly, heart failure set in, and he died, unconscious at the end, thank God. Of course, I cannot pretend to have the same share in it as poor Minto. Again, Minto is his nickname for Mrs. Moore. But I am very, very sorry, though to me the horrors he suffered here were much more heartrending than his death could ever be. Here there's a footnote. It says it would be difficult to exaggerate the effect of this experience on Lewis. He does not reveal Dr. Askin's name in his autobiography, but it is the doc he has in mind when he cites a friend's madness as one reason for a, quote, retreat, almost a panic-stricken fright from all that sort of romanticism which had hitherto been the chief concern of my life, end quote. Here he continues in his letter to Arthur. As you will understand, we are all rather run down and dead tired, in mind, at any rate. Isn't it a damned world? And we once thought we could be happy with books and music. We are at present engaged in moving to another house. Your letter is rather cryptic, he says. I gather you objected to your Irish visit more than ever, and so we shall every time till the bitter end. One thing in your letter, however, is excellent. I mean what you say you feel about your work. That's the stuff. As you say, work is the only thing, except people, of course, the very few people one cares about, that is worth caring about. I find it hard to imagine your way of thinking in painting. The technical side counts for so much more with you than with poets. One thing I take, it is sure for all the arts, that the noble thoughts and beautiful ideas and vision and all the other rot that appeals to amateurs is just what does not count for twopence. It's the man who sees how to do something that matters. I am glad you read Strachey's Victoria. It's a capital book. In the intervals of packing, etc., I am working away at routine work for exams, chiefly the dull mechanical parts for which alone I am fit just at present. If you can make your visit to Oxford later than May, you would be more likely to see something of us, for we're in the devil of a muddle at present. With love and good wishes from all the family, yours ever, Jack. So, yeah, I feel like that was good. It was nice to see him recounting what we've been covering here in the diary. So these are nice companion works with each other. I highly recommend you getting your hands on them. You know, since I'm actually reading directly from these works, I want to make sure that I'm giving credit and doing a little advertisement for you to buy these. Get your copy of the collected letters of C.S. Lewis. I presume that these are still in print. And then also All My Road Before Me. Both of them edited by Walter Hooper. Let's see here. One of them, the publisher is Harper San Francisco for the Collected Letters, Volume 1. And Harvest Book, Harcourt, Brace, and Company is the diary here. So this is what we've been working from, what we will continue to work through along with Lewis's other published works on our project. Robot Lady, is there anything that you would like to say in closing before we shut this one down today?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
No worries, Robot Lady. That's a good place to end it today. Thank you, everyone, for coming as usual, either to the live stream or to the recorded. I don't know what I'm trying to say. If you're here live or if you're here after the fact, it's good to have you. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your contributions as always. Until next time, my friends, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold. Insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Said flavor. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tape's rants.